Howdy folks, good morning, afternoon, evening, tea time, whatever the time it is in your part of the world. I tried to censor myself. I hope you're all doing fantastic. And I myself am definitely doing fantastic. Today, yes today, the Conquerors Banner buff, or ability, from Necrolords is getting buffed. If you've been watching the channel or staying up with content that I'm producing on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, the whole shebang, you probably know by now that I've been a Necrolord since day one, and that I've been pretty disappointed with our ability. Stayed strong, went through it, even hit 803s and 2s, still felt bad. It didn't feel strong. I felt the constant need or requirement to let people know or forewarn them that I am in fact a Necrolord Warrior. Yeah, my item level may be 220, and I could do most of the content of the game, but I don't have Condemn, and I don't have the Spear, and I don't have the Aftershock. Literally anything else has been better. However, today, I have a slight suspicion a lot of people are going to be becoming a Bone Lord. Yeah, I'm still banking on that. Bone Lords. Not Necrolord. Bone Lord. Anywho, in today's video, instead of going over some of the other things, like how I was excited about the buff and what changed to it, we're going to go a little more elaborate on how the ability can be used or utilized, what it actually means for us, and also some of the Soulbinds that you should be using, in my opinion. Keep in mind, I am not a Mythic tier Raider, I am not a Gladiator. This is from my standpoint of just playing a Warrior for 15 years. That's it. I'm a pretty casual player. I'm still somewhere in the upper category cloud. I don't like categorizing that, but that's what it is. I don't ever want to mislead you folks that this is the god tier thing to do and this is what you should do. If you don't do, your trash. I'm not really much of a person to say that kind of stuff. And I absolutely guarantee you that if you were to search up the WoW section, you will find people that are heavily dedicated towards doing the numbers, cranking that out, etc. that could give you better information than what I can provide to you today. But I'm still going to bleed out my thoughts, processes, and what I personally do in playing a Necrolord Warrior, which has not really been something that people have looked for before. But I'm assuming that maybe you found this video today because you found out that Necrolord Warriors are pretty cool, and they actually got buffed, and in a very, very grand way that makes them somewhat competitive to the other covenants. So, let's hop into it. In typical Touchpadwarrior fashion, no face cam right here, just looking at the game. I'm going to go over the Soulbinds and Conduits that you would be using as being a Necrolord. There's not a lot of content on this because, guess what? Not many people have been a Necrolord Warrior. I'm going to try to give a very, very brief rundown on PvP and PvE, and if you feel like you would need more elaboration on these things, feel free to come ask me on Twitch. More than welcome to. Any questions are appreciated. I want to help you guys understand exactly what's going on. For PvP, I like to use Marlith, and that's the first thing we're going to go into. The passive does not really affect us in PvP, but it's more so the end. Ultimate form. While channeling Fleshcraft, you are immune to crowd control and regenerate 2% health every 1 second. It's a 3-second channel. That's what you get. If you finish a full channel, you gain 3 seconds of crowd control immunity, during which you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. It's quite a decent heal, and also with the changes to Fleshcraft that we have as of today, I'll read it out for you. It's a 2-minute cooldown. Form a shield of flesh and bone over 3 seconds that absorbs damage equal to 40% of your maximum health for 2 minutes. While channeling, your damage taken is reduced by 20%. The passive, which more so affects PvE content, moving near an enemy corpse consumes their essence and reduces the cooldown of Fleshcraft by 1 second. Unless you're doing a BG, enemy corpses don't really matter, and you're not going to really reduce the cooldown of Fleshcraft. I'll give you a brief example of how much shield absorb that is. Being at 37,000 health, that is a wicked 14,880 damage absorb shield. While channeling it, you take 20% reduced damage, you're also immune to CC, and then afterwards you're immune to CC, on top of which you heal. This makes it fantastic. So, enough of Marlith and what that has. What your conduits that you have available to you. You get 2 potency conduits, right here. You get 1 endurance conduit, and 1 finesse conduit. That's what I personally like to roll with. There's obviously other options of what you'd like to do, depending on what your playstyle is, etc. But this is what I pick. I go for Crash the Ramparts, because Overpower is typically what you can use as a filler. You're not going to really using Slam as a lot in PvP. And I also like to go for Mortal Combo. So Mortal Combo, Mortal Strike has a secondary chance to hit. If you're familiar with Warriors in the past, Sword Specialization being a thing, having a chance to do a secondary hit, this very much acts like that. It's kind of wicked, and I really love it, even though it's only 16%, that might seem minimal, but when you get that burst window where a secondary Mortal Strike happens to hit, potentially even crit, it can really make a massive blow. Giggity. The only thing where I would see these would be changed up for potency conduits, unless you are Venthyr, I don't see Ashen Juggernaut making a good call, being that you get crit from Execute, or Condemn. Veteran's Repute is the one that's specific towards being a Necrolord. Conquerors Banner increases your strength by 16%. It's pretty decent. It's a flat 16% strength increase, but only while Conquerors Banner is up, and it's only for 15 seconds. Between these two, I'm gonna stick with these. I personally like to go with Inspiring Presence for a finesse conduit. Rallying Cry's duration and health granted is increased by 32%. And for a default endurance conduit, I like to go for the reduced cooldown on Dab with the Sword. 226, these are all 226, keep in mind. It reduces the cooldown by 32 seconds. The only other thing out of Marlith that I'd like to call out to would be this, which is Ooze's Frictionless Coating. When reduced below 50% health, Ooze courses over you, granting you shield for 15% of maximum health for 10 seconds. May only occur once per 30 seconds. That should be a minute, honestly, I'll tell you right now. But it's 30 seconds, that's pretty grand. If your healing can be topped off, you dip below 50, you get that awesome little bonus absorb maximum health shield. It's pretty grand. Enough of that, that's what I use for PvP content. In PvE content, I like to use Emily. The default, the passives. This is what you get, lead by example. Conquerors Banner increases your strength by 5% and up to 4 nearby allies, which means if you're in a 5-party group, you get buffed and your entire team gets buffed. Primary stat by 2% for 20 seconds. Keep in mind Conquerors Banner is on a 2-minute cooldown, and also the Conquerors Banner effect affects 2 nearby allies for 15 seconds. This carries 5 seconds over and affects your entire party. You personally as the warrior, gain 2% additional strength for each ally affected. So in doing dungeon content like Mythic Plus, you will receive 15% strength using your banner. Just as is with Emily. Pretty grand as it is, and in which doing so, I also take Veteran's Repute, which means every time we use Conqueror's Banner, we receive, as the warrior, 31% strength increase. It's a pretty nice flat damage increase, much like how Mastery from Conqueror's Banner now affects us. The other option I go for, and keep in mind this character was copied over 3 weeks ago, like from the previous video. I don't have the access over here, but I do on live. Yeah, 2 potencies. I like to use Veteran's Repute, and I also have really been enjoying Mortal Combo, but you could easily use Crash the Ramparts, and there's also some situations where it can be applicable to use Merciless Bone Grinder, which will Bladestorm ends your whirlwind damage increased by 80% for 9 seconds. Pretty decent. Those are good calls. You can kind of toy with that as you like, whatever your playstyle is. Again, I'm not a top tier content creator or top tier progression player. This is what I personally like to use, because this is good for slight cleave and really good for single target. The other thing is you get access to 1 finesse and then 1 endurance. This doesn't really matter too much, but this, your fleshcraft increases your maximum health by 5% for 30 seconds. It's okay, it helps absorb some damage. And then down here, because I like to go for the secondary potency conduit, movement speed is increased by 3% for each nearby enemy up to 15%. So if you have 5 nearby enemies, you have a 15% movement speed increase. Will help you dodge swirlies on the ground, fire, move out of mechanics a little bit quicker, make up for reaction time. I personally really enjoy that. The other thing I've considered going is you could pick up another endurance, and the benefit that you would get would be that you would get 3% haste for 10 seconds after defeating an enemy. 15%. I personally would rather go for another potency and then movement speed increase. That's my personal choice. And that pretty much rounds out just PvP, PvE. Those are the two choices of what I would go for. Now, to talk about the banner buff itself, if you are new to being a Necrolord, don't worry, you don't have to worry about how it acted before. It's a very elongated process, and it had very interesting dynamics to it that made it not so fun, and it wasn't that grand. Anywho, what you have today, as of today, this is the finely tuned, renewed Conquerors Banner. It is a 2-minute cooldown. Brandish the Conquerors Banner, granting 400 mastery and a 30% increased movement speed to you and up to 2 allies. Those are nearest by allies, keep in mind. And preventing movement speed from being reduced below 100% for 15 seconds. On top of which, you also generate full rage per second. It's pretty decent for literally any warrior spec, whether it be arms, fury, or prot. Having that rage increase will help you get more rampages off for fury. Having that rage increase will help you get more defensives out, or threat generation, and for arms, or just damage throughput, flat out. Really good. As we're going to go into this, I was very fortunate enough at 2 a.m., which is now 3 a.m. my time, as I look at my invisible watch and you can't see that, that I had some buddies of mine actually download the PTR and do some very fine-tuned testing to see how the Conquerors Banner actually played out. Because things that we're curious about looking into were things like, it's my face again, can it work out of LOS? Which means if a target is behind a pillar and you use Conquerors Banner, do they still get affected by it? What the maximum range is on it. Previously, what I was told that it would be 100 yards. Yards? Wow, nice. Oh, buddy. Recording this video after a few drinks. I apologize. They're telling y'all it's 3 a.m. Anywho, that it was 100 yards. You will see soon that that is not the case. And if you were to cast it on an ally that is within LOS and they run out of LOS or range, will it still affect them? These things typically do not matter for PvE content. They don't. In more cases than not, you're going to be in LOS of your allies, and you'll at least have 2 allies nearby that will get your buff. You being the warrior in a Mythic Plus scenario, your DPS warrior at least, your tank's going to get the buff, and whoever the hell else is closest. If you're doing Mythic Plus in the standard fashion that we are right now in Shadowlands, you're probably the only melee DPS. Let's be honest. But there are still some scenarios where you would play with another melee DPS, and it just makes some mechanics a little bit more difficult, and it makes a little more strain or stress on your healer, which you shouldn't provide. But in those scenarios, it will either affect the tank and another code melee DPS, or you can actually coordinate with your group who's going to run closer to you, and then you drop your banner. Because 400 mastery, holy shit, dude. Like, that's a lot of mastery. We might not think about that if you've been playing the game as long as I have, but 400 mastery is actually quite a bit. And some classes get affected by mastery in a more significant stance than we do. For example, the Frost DK that I gave this buff to in testing got 30% mastery, whereas I got somewhere in the ballpark of 12 to 13%, which actually is still pretty good. It's a flat damage increase, for arms warriors at least. Would we have preferred crit or haste? Obviously. But this Covenant ability is not built around selfishness. It is built around bolstering allies, communication, and working as a team. And those things alone can make it a difficult ability. And if you're dealing with this ability, the Conquerors Banner, up until today, you can understand how difficult or restraining that can be. affecting mastery is the most universal thing that could probably buff other allies, regardless of what class or spec they are, that it could be universal. So it's not hindering in case some class happens to not really benefit from crit or haste as significantly as we do. So mastery seemed like the right call. That's what Blizzard chose. Will we see something change on the line? I don't know. I'm not a developer, but I'm just happy for my banner to be on my back. Like, here's me casting it. Bam. It runs with me. It's fantastic. Here's my 30% movement speed. It's fantastic. My mastery went up a lot. Went from 8.8 to 21.37. It's quite fantastic. Our default no mastery is 8.8. It's a flat damage increase as long as you have deep wounds on the target. And you will have deep wounds on the target. If you don't, then I hate to say it, buddy, but you're probably failing your rotation. Anywho, let's hand it over to, I guess it would be past Justice. Right. It would be past Justice. He recorded that like an hour ago with his buddies. This is future Justice. I should probably stop talking to myself like this. Anywho, enjoy some trying to study and analyze the effects of Conquerors Banner and how it works now with 9.0.5 and seeing how you can use it to its full effectiveness in those scenarios. I'll see you all in a little bit. Alrighty, folks, we are testing out the absolute range of the Conquerors Banner coming out today. This is when you'll watch this video, but we're currently on PTR. The testing that we're doing is seeing if it works in LOS, which is Rust. You want to say hi, buddy?
What's going on?
Viking was Myver.
Hey.
And High Bear over here being a champion.
Hello.
So, with a lot of trial and error, we have tried to determine if it can work in LOS, what its max range is, which we were previously told that it was 100 yards. Spoiler alert, doesn't seem like it is. But through enough like trial and error sitting here in PTR for the past like 30 to 45 minutes, we found the maximum range that it could be is 30 yards to receive the buff. And also that it does not work outside of LOS. The way to test this theory, again, through trial and error, is Viking is currently sitting at 29.5 range, so under 30 yards. Rust is over LOS, and to see that Hyper will not receive the buff, being that it buffs two nearest allies, he's sitting at 32 yards range. So when I cast my buff, you can see Rust does not get it, Viking does, and Hyper over here does not. No buff. So when using the Conqueror's Banner in a PvP scenario, if you happen to have your healer or an ally out of 30 yards range or behind a pillar, they will not receive your Conqueror's Banner. Alright, and to get to that point just a little bit further, Conqueror's Banner is supposed to apply to the two nearest allies. So in theory, I have the same group here. We have Hyber, Viking, and Rust. Rust is literally eating my ass. Hyber is within 4.6 yard range. Viking is still within 5 yard range, but it should not select him. So when using the banner, boom, it does work in true that it selects Rust and it selects Hyber. I'm gonna leap out and test to see if they still keep their buff. And even though I'm way out of 30 yards, they still have their buff. They can still chunk their damage. So as long as you use this ability within range of allies, they can go anywhere. As long as they're selected buffed, initially, they will keep their buff rolling. So if you happen to be around a pillar, you can group it together. I'm going to banner real quick, and then they can fuck off and do their things LOS correctly, whatever your teammates need to do. Right, we're going to give a little testing to the banner, acting as kind of a faux freedom by dueling Rust over here. So go ahead and do a duel. He's going to cast Hindrance on me. In case you guys are unfamiliar with what Hindrance does, it reduces movement speed by 70%. Go ahead.
Okay, hindrance up.
Slowed? Not anymore. With the new Conqueror's Banner, you cannot be slowed below 100% movement speed. By default, if you were not slowed anyways... Sorry, that was a habit of kick your flash of light. By default, they give you a 30% increased movement speed, but you cannot be reduced below 100% movement speed. So if you're getting hit with a wicked slow, you can actually use it as kind of like a faux freedom. However, you still can get rooted, stunned, blinded, etc. But it still is really nice if you're having difficulty with connecting to your target, that you can use this banner to make sure you're on point. Hopefully in doing threes, you're able to buff your allies correctly, or at least pop banner around a corner first to make sure they're within LOS within 30-yard range, buff them, and then also kind of give yourself a little freedom. And a quick shout out to Viking, Rust, and Hyper for being here. Viking, anything you want to say?
Yeah, you can find me at the Touchpadwarrior's Twitch channel basically every night on WoW.
Alright, Rust?
You can catch me at Ross Gaming Community, and it was great being here.
And Hyper?
You can catch me on Twitch at Highbear, or on Instagram and Twitter at I'mHighbear.
There we go. Big shout out to these folks who are actually sitting here literally at 2 a.m. my time, like 4 or 5 a.m. on their times, for helping me test out the range of the banner and doing all that testing stuff that we can be the most badass Bone Lord we possibly could be today. Hi. It's been a little bit. And I mean that because post-production things, and I literally hit the record button again after 5 seconds. So we learned a lot there. We previously had the understanding that it works within 100 yards. It doesn't. It seems like Conquerors Banner, as a default, has 30-yard range, which means if you are 30.1 yards away, you will not receive that buff. 2 nearest allies does not care. Also, if you're doing open world content, and this is something that was not recorded, but if you're doing open world content, if you actually have allies nearby doing a world quest or whatever it may be, they do receive your buff even if you're not in a party. It's kind of neat. They're going to randomly wonder why the hell they received a huge damage buff, but you can give them a high five and say thank you as you walk away and never talk to them again. That was a pause for awkward silence. Anywho, it's interesting. I had this understanding initially that it would work regardless if you were doing a 3v3 scenario, that no matter where your allies were, they would get your buff. It seems like, actually, that you need to be, as the warrior, really strategic on when you use that banner buff. Though granted it is on a 2-minute cooldown and you have a little bit more accessibility on when you can use it, being if you're in higher rated games, they last a little bit longer, even though we're dealing with a crazy burst window right now in Shadowlands. You need to still coordinate really well as a warrior when you're going to use that. Make sure you're in range of your 2 other teammates till they get the buff. After that, they can kind of fuck off. They can do whatever the hell they want. They still have their buff and their speed increase, or they have their kind of faux freedom of not being reduced below 100%, even if they go LOS. There might be some scenarios where you have to intervene correctly? That's not a word, Will. Correctively to efficiently. I don't do a lot of good post-production stuff, so all of that's going to be in this video. Intervene correctly so that way you can strategically use your banner ability. Because being that it's not now standing on the ground, where you have to be in the radius to get the buff, as long as you're initially within line of sight and 30 yards of your teammates, they will get that buff. And that buff can be a game breaker. Make sure you use it effectively. It's going to take a lot of trial and error, so a little bit of more function than, I'll be honest, what warriors have had to deal with in the past. In my personal experience, that this seems a little more strategic and involved, and a lot more coordination, instead of just going in there and smashing the hell out of things. That's what we like to do as warriors. We just go in there and kind of like ignore everything and bash. You kill the target. Cool, you connected. You can use this banner in certain effectiveness ways as to make sure you're staying on point with the target. If you have, like what we saw in those clips, Endurance, I believe, is the ability from Rat Paladins that reduces your speed by 70%. You can use that to make sure you can connect. If obviously you have Charge, Intimidating Shouts, Storm Bolts, or Heroic Lead. As a warrior in PvP, we have a lot of ways to connect to target. This is another way of getting a mobility out of yourself to make sure you can still connect, and also on top of which have a decent damage throughput cooldown. It's really cool. I really enjoy it. I'm gonna be having a blast this week. on Twitch. That's a hint. Hi, on Twitch. Not if you know, but I stream at bizarre times. I like awkward silences. Y'all like awkward silences? No? Just me? Anywho, I tried to make this video quick. I don't think it's going to be. It's probably going to be 15 to 20 minutes long. Let's hope not, but probably going to be. I like to really go in depth in explaining exactly how this is functioning and really give my voice and my opinion on what's going on. I hope you learned something, and I hope that if you choose to be a Necrolord Warrior, that you can rock your banner in the best style possible. That's the goal. And this week, if you happen to pop in on Twitch, I'm trying to finish out my Keystone Master. We have 5 out of 8 dungeons completed, and it's a tyrannical week. Might be a wee bit painful, but we're still gonna try, damn it. So we don't give up. We're gonna do it. And now our banner's better, so we're gonna have some crazy damage throughput. Anywho, if you liked this content, feel free to follow me on Twitch. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you over there. We're trying to go for partner, and if we do, this beard and hair will be purple. Instagram is my primary source of social media. That's where I post a lot of edited screenshots and things like that, and mogs and all that stuff. And Twitter is where I post a lot of my personal thoughts and random miscellaneous garbage that I think about throughout the day. Any of those sound fancy to you? Cool! If not, hi, you could also like and subscribe and comment on YouTube video. That'd also be appreciated. Tell me what your favorite flavor of cheesecake is. I don't know, whatever the hell you want. Like, it's just the internet. You can kind of comment things. Just don't be an asshole. Really all we ask. Not a lot. Just don't be an ass. Anywho, I will see you all hopefully in a week. I'm really terrible with trying to allocate time to record videos. I had some complications tonight and somehow found some free time to record a video, and I was definitely inspired by the patch coming out today. Right, it is today. It's 3 a.m. for me. I should probably go to bed. But hopefully I'll see you tomorrow on Twitch. And if I don't, have a good morning, afternoon, evening, tea time, whatever the fuck time it is in your part of the world. And make sure to make every day absolutely fucking legendary.